Hey there, friends. Welcome back to another edition of The Link. And I hope you've enjoyed these conversations that we've been having about faith and work. You know, we started this multi-week conversation with the thought that about a third of our life is lived out on our job, if you're lucky. For some of you, that is actually a lot more. You're maybe spending half of your day on your job. So it consumes a lot. And what I don't want is for you to see your job through a non-gospel lens. In other words, I don't want you to concede any inch of your life to the enemy. I want you to see God's sovereignty in all areas of your life, including your work and on your job. Now, some of you may say, Chris Brooks, you have no idea the type of hostile environment I work in. You have no idea how much I hate my job. You have no idea how broken my industry is. Well, I'm so glad you tuned in today because there's three questions I want to leave you with that I think is where the rubber meets the road. If God really does want to work in me and through me on my job, I think there's three questions that I need to ask myself. Question number one, what evil exists in the industry that I work in or on the job that I work on that God has called me to challenge? You know, God does not send us into perfect places. Perfect places don't need the gospel. Perfect places don't need the light. But he sends us into dark places, into difficult places, precisely because he wants to bring his redemption there. So maybe you work in an industry that you say, man, this industry is marked by corruption. This industry is marked by abuses. Well, how does God want to use you to challenge that, to model a different and a better story? Because that's what the gospel is, a different and a better story. I love when I get a chance to read about people who stepped into evil spaces and brought gospel light. I think about William Wilberforce. Maybe you've heard his story before. He was used in the political arena in Britain. He was actually one of the parliamentarians that was used to overthrow slavery. Now think about living in a world where slavery was acceptable and being used by God to get that culture to the place where they considered slavery unthinkable. How does that happen? It's because William Wilberforce knew that he was called to the halls of government just as much as the pastor was called to the pulpit. He understood that the very reason why God put him in that place was to challenge evil and darkness. So question one, what evil exists in my industry or on my job that God has called me to challenge? Question number two, what brokenness exists in my industry that God has called me to fix? Sometimes the issue isn't evil, maybe it's brokenness. Maybe the bureaucracy of your current space is so broken that things just aren't getting done that are meant to get done. I want to encourage you to think about ways that you, from your place within your company or on your job, can help to fix broken practices, broken ways of thinking, broken systems, so that more people can be helped. I think about my good friend Trina, who works in the adoption arena. She's been working in that arena now for close to 2 decades. And one of the things that she realized pretty early on is that, man, there are so many kids that are wonderful kids waiting to be adopted, but so often the bureaucracy and the system is broken in a way that prevents that from happening. So how can I remove barriers between foster and adoptive parents and these kids who are waiting for forever homes? Maybe you, like Trina, can think about the arena you are working in and overturn some of the brokenness. Third question, and that is, what beauty or goodness doesn't currently exist in my industry or on my job or in my company that God has called me to create? You know, this is a reminder that we as Christians are not meant to simply be consumers of culture, but creators of culture. We're not just mouths who consume, we are minds that create. So maybe you want to think of a whole new way to go about meeting the needs of your customer or your client or the end user of your product or service. Think about all new ways to be able to bring about beauty where it currently doesn't exist. And I think that those of you who are engineers and designers, man, what a great opportunity you have in that space. Right now, we live in a technological age that is marked by AI. Think about the opportunities you have if you're in the engineering or design space to be able to bring beauty where none exists. I think about a good friend of mine who works in the area of architecture, and he says he wanted to bring affordable housing into low-income communities that didn't have beautiful and affordable housing. And he's been able to do that not just in one community, but in communities around the country. And I would encourage you to consider doing that. Where can I bring beauty where it doesn't currently exist? So those are the questions. And now we have to ask ourselves, how now shall I live in light of what I've just heard? So I hope that you take from this conversation action, and that you'll begin to get excited about Monday morning, and that you'll close that gap between Sunday and Monday. Sunday's the lecture, Monday's the lab. So go out. Let's change the culture for Christ, and let's see his glory at work in our work. God bless, and I can't wait to see you on the next edition of The Link.